Hello, Bob. These are your Solex carburetors that gone through and done as much as I could without doing any machine work on them, and they have turned out pretty darn nice considering. I'm going to go through some information beforehand before we do the engine actual testing. Since we did not do any some of this is going to be out of focus and some is going to be on macro. The macro is more important, so bear with me on the out of focus stuff. Since no machine work was done, we have the original butterflies and throttle shafts in here, and all the idle mixture holes are active. So this idle mixture screw gets closed off and blanked off at all times. Don't mess with it, just leave it alone. And the same thing with the one on the first barrel carburetor. It's closed off, just leave it alone. Now then, we've got all new factory gaskets, which you can tell by the red color. And these are the kind of gaskets that will withstand the modern fuels. Let's see, we got trying to think what else we got. All the steel parts are CAD plated per original. When you're mounting these things, I'm going to be moving the camera around, trying to be able to do some of the macro work for you. When you're mounting the carburetors, when you're installing the fuel lines on the carburetors, use a wrench to stabilize this fitting, and then you just simply do all your turning on the swivel fitting on the fuel line. That way you keep this stabilized so that it does not potentially rip out the die cast threads in here. So just keep this stable and move this fitting only. In terms of actually mounting the carburetors, one of the best things that you'll find is a 1/4" drive set of wobble sockets, which are really great for mounting, getting into the tight spots to bolt the carburetors in position. And when you bolt them in position, just snug the bolts down a little bit at a time, so that the carburetors themselves are in place, but will actually jiggle a little bit. And then get your big aluminum air log that covers over the carburetors and put it into place, and then go back in and do your final tightening, and then test to make sure that the air log will come off and on easily, because if you tighten the carburetors up first and then go back in later to do the air log, it's not going to fit, because there is about a 1/4 inch of play vertically in the carburetors in terms of mounting them. Always use new rubbers, new factory rubbers at this point. Let's see what else. And when you do the final tightening of the carburetors to the intake manifold, make sure you do it in a crisscross fashion so you don't overstress the ears. And also make sure that your intake manifold is tight to the cylinder head, and you can test it by actually picking up on the intake manifold, making sure that it does not move. And also you take feeler gauges and put down in here and make sure you don't have any gaps. You want to find all that information out now rather than later. Let's see. Fuel is very important on these carburetors. I suggest an extra inline fuel filter after your factory filter and before the fuel pump. Make sure you got clean gas. Make sure your fuel lines are clean. If you see any red sediment in your fuel filter, or something that looks like dirt, red dirt, it's not, it's rust, and you have to get that out of your gas tank immediately and address the issue. Now then, we're going to run the carburetors and then actually show you how to tune them. You always use your initial settings. If this should never be necessary, but if at some point in time someone has goofed up your carburetors or messed around with them or something, your base settings are tighten this in until it just snugs, and then back it out 1.5 turns. That's your idle mixture screw. And then for your base setting on your idle speed, again, screw this in 1.5 turns. Once it contacts the carburetor lever screwed in 1.5 turns, and that'll give you your basic settings for starting this the car and getting it starting the tuning process. And you can't tune it until you get it warmed up. Now we're out here in a let me see. Let's go over some other stuff before we start the engine and make noise. This is your G55 idle jet, and the only thing that jet does is handles your idle. Anything above idle speed, like 1500 and above, that idle jet is no longer doing anything. So if you are driving on the highway and you come off off the highway from driving real fast, and then you come to a stop sign and the car dies, one of these jets is clogged up. Or if you just can't, if the car just refuses to idle, but if you blip the throttle, it'll run just fine. One of these jets is clogged up. And all I have to do is take it out and blow out the little teeny orifice on the end of it, and put it back in. You're ready to go. It's no big deal. If you're on the road, all you have to do is swap the unused jet here over to the used, the side that functions, and then you should be ready to rock and roll. Let's see here, what else? That's it. Let's see, we can't start this engine. It is about 40 degrees. It's about 40 degrees outside, so we got us a stone cold engine. And as you can tell, well, it's a little out of focus, but here's our temperature gauge reading cold. And your basic starting procedure is to make sure you have fuel in the carburetors, and you come to your fuel pump and hit your priming lever and make sure you got fuel in the carburetors. Yes, if the car is set for a few days or even longer, you can always prime your carburetors and activate your fuel pump. Next, you will give it a couple of gooses, and you hit your choke, and let's see what happens. Notice when I activate the choke, I'm actually moving the throttle. That's where your increase in idle comes from when you're choking the car. The choking doesn't actually increase the idle speed. It's the fact that you're physically opening up the carburetors as if you have your foot on the gas. And what you're going to do is keep your choke on until the car wants to idle, and slowly release your choke as you're driving. This shouldn't take more than a couple, 3 minutes. Depends on the ambient temperature, obviously. And considering we're near freezing out here right now, that's pretty darn nice. So what we're going to do now is wait for the engine to warm up. So keep an eye on the temperature gauge. You may not be able to read the numbers, but the gauge is reading 0, and what we want to read is about 150, 160, especially in this temperature. So in order to accelerate that process, thermostat opened up, and our temperature is stabilized, and we're going to do some tuning, or show you how to tune it, and that's why we got the macro so you can see what's going on. Now, first thing you have to do is disconnect your throttle linkage so that you are not tuning against misadjusted throttle linkage. Notice how the idle changed when I took that the throttle linkage, pull that off, because that means the throttle linkage is out of adjustment, and then we're going to take care of that at the very last. So you just make sure this doesn't move anywhere, it doesn't go anywhere, so that your second carburetor opens up artificially. And what we're going to do is we're going to check to make sure we got no airflow through the second barrels. And now, that's what I was afraid of. My synchrometer broke earlier. There we go. Now we're working. Okay. So what we're doing is checking airflow with the synchrometer in the second barrels, and there's nothing you can do about this. So this is where the machine work would have come in. We could have tightened this up a little bit, but for non-machine work carburetors, this is pretty darn nice. Now we come over here. You want as little airflow through the second barrel as possible, because that affects your idle. And you can see we're a little bit more there, but the other ones was 2 and change, 2.5, and over here we've got about 3 3/4, and that is strictly back here in the second barrel. Excuse me for moving the thing around so much. That's in the second barrel butterfly, and I'll push on it a little bit, see if that'll help. Yeah, I got down to about, got down to about 3. So that's pretty darn good. That means we won't have that. The second barrel is opening up and fighting us in terms of idle. Now, we're going to synchronize the carburetors themselves so that they are drawing the same amount of air as each other, if possible. And right now we've got, looks like about 4, and over here we got 4. Now that gives us an idle of right around 900 to 1,000, which is where it's supposed to be. And that idle speed is simply controlled right here with these screws. So if we want to jack up our idle a smidge, we screw that in, and we screw that in about the same amount, and our idle is increased. We're up to 5 on this one, and 4.5 here, so we need to move this one up just a smidge. And I think my synchrometer may be a little gimpy, so I just jacked up the idle there. Now we're almost up to 4 3/4. And a little bit more. There we go. Now we're up to 5. But that gives us we're at idle about 1,000. I'm going to leave it there because there's nothing wrong with that idle. Sounds good. Now then, the next thing we're going to do is going to show you how to adjust the idle mixture screws, which is right here. And again, those are adjusted at idle. And what we're looking for is you screw it in until the engine stumbles, screw it out to the engine stumbles, and then you find your midpoint where the engine runs the best. So you should be able to hear that on the as the idle changes. Alright, that's very dramatic. You won't necessarily do it that dramatically. I just want to let you know what it actually sounds like. And again, the idle drops off. So what we're going to do is do it correctly and very slowly, listening for the best possible running of the engine. You should not have to do this, but I don't know, once every 6 months or a year, depends on the how much you drive. That sounds pretty darn good right there. Just make sure our throttle is not opened up. back here. Idle is starting to degrade. That's pretty good there. Now, I think our idle is increased because we got those properly adjusted. So now I'm going to back off on the idle screw, about a quarter turn, and we're going to take some measurements. And this is where the synchrometer comes in. You certainly can listen to the amount of air being drawn through here to get an idea if you've got these in sync. But this is where the meter comes in. Okay, so I'm going to back this off down to back where we were, about 4.5. That's too much. Let's try 4. Indicated 4, and again I'm pushing up on the throttle lever here to make sure I don't have any throttle lever opening prematurely. And back here we are at 4.5. See if we can back that down. That's alright. Yeah, we're down to 4 approximately. Let's go back. Double check over here. Down to 4. Alright. Got those synchronized. Our last bit of business is to make sure that our linkage is set properly. Now then the rest of the linkage upstream here, this is all set with the center to center and the instructions that I will send you. This last piece is a turnbuckle. You will get the camera in a little bit tighter. Alright, you're going to undo your nut here, your jam nut here, and then you got your turnbuckle, and you can turn it, and this is one of these is a reverse thread, and it's a normal thread, so that when you turn this in and out, the ball sockets move in and out, so you can dial this thing in just absolutely perfect. Now I don't have that set up like this right now. I just do it very roughly to show you what the process is, and the end result is you get this ball, these sockets adjusted so that when you come in here, snap that in place, nothing changes. And then you get to do the fun stuff. And you see you got back, you come back to your idle. Turned off. Do a hot start. For no machine work, these are really nice carburetors. I think you're going to enjoy racing around in your car with these carburetors. Anyway, there you go. Thanks, Bob. And next thing I'll be getting on is your throttle cross shaft. That's still at the platers, and I'll get the new rod that goes through here, get this bushed, and get that all taken care of. And you need to let me know if you need some more ball sockets. One ball socket came with the with the linkage here, and I didn't know if you needed the rest of these refreshed, because they do wear out. I mean, they do wear internally. So And any questions you have, please let me know. Thank you, sir.